Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja for Movie Talk, Episode 3. This one's called Boys' Night In. This is a little bit of a story time, a little bit of a, history of Movie Ninja. And so, Boys' Night In, what does that mean? Well, when we were moving around and when we were very, very young, my brother and I didn't really see our dad very much. And it wasn't because, well, sometimes he was TDY, but sometimes it was just because of the really late hours he would have. There would be some times during the week where we didn't, we saw him come home, but we didn't technically see him because he would work like the graveyard shift, essentially. And he would be just sort of like would disappear into mom and dad's, into their bedroom, and we wouldn't see him until maybe the next evening, and then he would go back and he would just like sleep. I mean, his job is very taxing and it's very long hours and like that, and so we were told, okay, just let dad rest, But there was this one weekly ritual that started soon after we came back stateside, and that was Boys' Night In. It was on Fridays, and it was a lot like indoor camping is the best way that I can describe it. Like, we would bring out blankets and little sleeping bags, because dad, usually had the couch and like that. And so what it would just be the three guys of the house, like my dad, my older brother, and me. And we would just be kind of, we were just hanging out, just relaxing, kind of, not too much as far as like catching up. It was really to just deflate from the week, from like school, and usually dad had more or less open weekends. I think that's probably why he worked the shifts that he did. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure about that, but it was just time for us to just spend time together. It was really, it was just really fun. It was just really like just a nice time to just sort of like bask in dad's company, and to just sort of like hang out, have fun. And I remember those times, that like the big thing was movie watching. And it would be kind of a half and half split. Like, dad would let us pick, for the most part. He would let us pick what exactly we wanted to see, but there would also be like times where we would just kind of, just like let dad pick, or, it was like kind of a coin toss, fair is fair, more or less. Me and my brother kind of got our say for a decent amount of the time, actually, probably like more so than, oh my goodness, just like the stuff that we had dad watch with us, like in reflection, whenever you're like younger and you just are watching the same thing over and over again. Does give you like a bit of like time to like reflect, just like the patience of your parents. I mean, really. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, we put blankets down on the carpet. We would get our sleeping bags, and then we would pick and choose from a certain selection that we already had, or what we would also sometimes do, we would go to the BX, and most BXs had a rental department, You would have the rental shops with the, like VHSs on the racks. If you don't know what a VHS is, ask someone a little older than you. They'll give you a history lesson. There you go. But that's a kind of a bygone ritual in itself, Like there aren't really any rental places anymore, It's just, we have the conveniences of streaming. I'm not going to say this like, oh, back in my day, we used to wander aimlessly around racks with VHS tapes, and it was so much better. No, not necessarily, but there was a kind of fun, sort of like atmosphere, just like being in a library, but it's just for like stuff that you haven't seen before. So it was it's very interesting. So sometimes you picked a winner, and sometimes you picked something that you stopped watching 15 minutes in. You know, but when me and my brother had our picks, like we would, geez, it's just like, because when you're a kid, you don't really have the best taste in movies. Like, yet you're not cultivated, you're not cultured yet, and so you just pick whatever. I mean, the latest Ernest movie, Ernest P. Worrell, for those of you who don't know. Like, I'm talking like Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Scared Stupid. Even as I'm saying some of these things, just like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the very first one, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't know how many times me and my brother, like, made Dad watch Dolph Lundgren save the universe from Skeletor, like, just thinking back, just like on these like movies that we used to see. And Dad also had a really good selection for us. Like, that was the thing, like we were never forced to watch certain things. And I'm really appreciative for that. I know that some of my friends growing up, and I know it's a common thing, no judgment certainly, but I know that because even with some of my friends and growing up, there was always that very small library for what their parents would allow them to watch. And you have to remember that this is back in the day where, like, you didn't have instant access to whatever it is you might have wanted to see at any given time. It had to be, you already had it on home media, or maybe watch it on TV if they had it. This is before the internet. This is before streaming services, where if you wanted to see a sitcom, you could pretty much like bring it up on YouTube or any number of streaming platforms, and you could just watch it. But I think that was also part of the fun. We had to pick and choose and select. What did we want to see? And sometimes also, like, once again, because it's Dad. Technically it was Dad's show, because it was his show to run, because he was the one that kind of just started us on this. It was just like fun little thing. So he would pick out stuff for us, and we kind of all enjoyed most of the same stuff. Like, and I've said it before, and I'll say it indefinitely into the future, like, I have my specific tastes, but like, I remember on some of those nights, like we would watch the Rankin Bass animated Hobbit. We would watch Flight of Dragons. And one of my favorites, I say this unapologetically, one of my favorites was The Last Unicorn, starring Mia Farrow and Alan Arkin. If you haven't seen that, it's a great show. That was some, like, and sometimes my older brother, he didn't like my selection, but then sometimes he would get to pick like two. But of course, getting back to it, like, my dad also had his picks, and yeah, that really did also help to shape the kind of movie fan that I am now, because my dad, I think, had great. I do. I think he had great selection in movies. He watched a lot of, like, we saw Godzilla almost destroy Japan, I don't know how many times. And then on occasion, we would watch Godzilla almost save the world from this bigger extraterrestrial three-headed jerk. Ghidorah, or Ghidorah, depending on your camp on that. I don't speak Japanese, so I'm not entirely sure which one is more accurate. But yeah, we would watch, Godzilla fight little toy like tanks and jets and nearly destroy Japan and sometimes even the world. And then again, like, sometimes he would fight Ghidorah. Sometimes he would fight Megalon with the help of Jet Jaguar. um, and like dad introduced us to Godzilla. One of the first films I remember for Godzilla was Godzilla versus King Kong. If you haven't seen it, it's great. Watch it. It's really good, campy fun. Mothra. Oh, Mothra was a big thing. It still is. Like when we watch like monster movies, one of Dad's first like picks, even now, is Godzilla flicks. Godzilla, Mothra. Mothra, very very complex lady. She can't help being a giant butterfly that even if all she ever wants to do is to rescue tiny fairy twins, and the flap of her wings just nearly destroys an entire city. Well, that's mostly on the villains. There's no reason for them to try and kidnap the fairy twins. And that was one of the things. Like, I remember there's this one little song in the very very first Mothra film that the twins sing, and it's a way of calling for help. I won't say too much more than that, but like we were raised, me and my brother, we were raised on Godzilla films, the early Universal monster movies, some high fantasy, like we watched like Willow, like those type of like fun fantasy action adventures, things like that. Dad also introduced us to some of the classics, but more the classics like in terms of like comedy, stuff that we weren't able to see on a regular basis. Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, and of course, if you're getting into slapstick comedy, then of course you're watching the Three Stooges, which but like that the Three Stooges, Mom hated for me and my brother to watch the Three Stooges because, being the impressionable little angels that we were, whenever we saw the Three Stooges, we were inspired to roughhouse. And Mom had, like, as any parent would, just get frustrated with kids, just, like acting like knuckleheads. Just because I see three grown men slapping each other around doesn't mean that we had to. Yeah, that's true. But but they made it seem fun somehow. But yeah, that was like one of the when we had boys' night in. That was one of the times we could also like watch, Three Stooges. I know that like my dad, my maternal grandfather, my uncles, uncle. I don't know about like my eldest uncle if he enjoyed the Three Stooges, but like yeah, we watched a lot of slapstick, a lot of monsters, a lot of cartoons, a lot of slapstick, and it was just like, along with the movies, there was also like we would have certain staples of snacks that we would enjoy. And of course, there's popcorn. Dad never really buys popcorn, then or now. He always makes and he's like, I can call him a popcorn addict. Every time he's gonna watch something on Netflix or watch when we still meet up and we still watch movies together, he's like, hey, you want some popcorn? As if I could say like, oh no, Dad, I'm gonna popcorn fast right now, and he would take me seriously. Like, he'll make a big pan of popcorn, like he would eat popcorn every single day if he could. I don't think he's ever. I know that as you get older, your tastes change, and sometimes you kind of like stray from certain types of like foods. Dad has always been, an avid like popcorn fanatic. He was like any possible excuse to make popcorn. He'll do that. But we also had popcorn with pickles. Like each of us would have like a pickle. And when Dad finished making the popcorn, he would put it in the this one pan that is almost as old as I am. And he was serving this big, like sort of like flat deep dish like pan. And we would put the pickles directly on it. Three of us, three pickles. And then we would just kind of like pick among ourselves, which one we wanted. But when the pickle juice, it would drip onto the popcorn, you had this really nice blend of like savory that the popcorn just like naturally has. And then, when it has the pickle juice, it has this really unique sort of like flavor combination. And it was just really like, and you would, because we all had like from the big pan, we all have our own personal bowls, and sometimes you got that little bit of popcorn with pickle juice on it. And it was just like, it was almost like an extra type of snack, It was really nice. And I remember those times as being one of the few times, not just to be around Dad and to just kind of like, just like hang out with Dad for a little bit, but also like, like also with my brother. Like my brother and I are separated by a few years. And so there's always this kind of, there was always this kind of like distance between us, but there were those times where they were just taking it in, watching Bilbo Baggins, narrowly escape being charbroiled by smog, or watching the Three Stooges beat the snot out of each other, and we were just like, we were equally excited, and we were equally just like, we were having fun. And that's not something that we always like, because it's not just like the age gap between us. It's just like we're very, very different, my brother and I, then and now. But it was just one of those times where we could just kind of relax and just enjoy something of a shared interest. Because both of us really were in tune with whatever Dad wanted to watch. Dad was very understanding. We watched a lot of Disney films. And we watched a lot of, silly slapstick comedies and things like that. Stuff that would kind of make me cringe to think about, like, watching, like, now, But, like, we were just kind of on point with whatever Dad was up for. Because Dad, I don't know, like, I know that if Dad had things his way, he would probably have us watching either some of the war movies that he was a really big fan of, just like, well, of course Mom wasn't gonna let that happen, but we didn't know. Dad liked, he liked Superman, Dad introduced us to Batman, And I don't know how many times back in those days we would watch, Michael Keaton throw Jack Nicholson off of a roof. But it was just, and there was just something that we synced up with like naturally. And I don't know, like that's probably not a unique experience necessarily, but I know that like, yeah, there were like some, like I was saying, some of my friends, they were really sort of like sheltered and controlled. You can't do this, you can't watch this, things like that. I think my parents just kind of sidestepped that by just kind of planning things out in advance, and we just kind of naturally gravitated to the stuff that my dad wanted to see. My dad introduced, of course, he introduced us to Star Wars. My dad and even as I think about it like now, like these are like things that maybe, if you're trying to get the younger generation involved with, like if you're trying to make them a DC fan, a Marvel fan, or a Star Wars fan, things like that. Like it's definitely like more deliberate, just to try to help them along, because there's a universe, and I can say that without seeing like it's a hyperbole. there's a universe of choices and selection now, and young people, like they just kind of like, you know, they don't necessarily need someone to hold their hand. It's like, oh yeah, like watch this because you'll like it. Yeah, sometimes, people offer that. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's just the way it works out. But back when my brother and I were young and we would have those boys' night in, it never felt like, oh, dad's gonna make us watch. Like the dad's gonna make us watch something. I can't even think of something like off the top of my head because it's like we never really strayed too far away from what like all of us wanted to see. Like we would watch, like I said, fantasy adventures. We would watch science fiction. We would watch monster movies. We would watch the animated films from like the 80s, like G.I. Joe, the motion picture, the movie stands out in my mind, and it just never felt like it was ever like an arm twist, like like you boys are gonna watch this and you're gonna like it. Like that was never really the case. Like we just all sort of like were on the same wavelength for the most part, whether or not it was like a comedy or whether or not it was something more escapist, things like that. And like I said, like, I think without meaning to, my dad primed me to be a nerd, and I think a really good way. Because just thinking back on this, it's like, yeah, we watched a lot of nerdy stuff. And yeah, part of that was like, when we would get to pick stuff for like ourselves, you can kind of like see where like our interests were and like that. But for the most part, we were actually like oddly enough, we were mostly on the same page. Like I know that like dad probably didn't enjoy the repetition so much because as he would say like, well, like we watched what we had and there you go, But so I don't know if it was just him exercising patience, like he was just like really tolerant of watching Masters of the Universe for the upteenth time, or maybe he just liked the film along with us, like, but I don't know. Like those are really just special, like they were special times, and yeah, they did influence a lot of the fandom that I still have, And for anyone who has seen sort of like the types of films that I review, it becomes pretty clear as to exactly like, okay, now it makes a little bit more sense, So yeah, and of course, like now, like you see things sort of like broaden out. Of course, change, like things change over time. Yeah, things change over time, and eventually we stopped. We stopped doing boys' night in. Dad's schedule was always changing, and there just kind of came a time where he had to also work the weekend shifts and like that. As we got a little bit older, my brother, wanted to hang out with his friends. Understandable. He wanted to hang out with his friends, but like that. Yeah, so I mean, there was a window in time where it was just a really nice sort of like, for our family, it was just a really nice sort of like, communal, just like the guys just like hanging out, for several years. And I do remember it fondly. Yeah. And for anyone, like, just, and mom, like, she got the night off. She would, she would just, she would just kind of like, my brother and I were kind of like just our dad's responsibility for Friday nights, like during boys' night in, and mom would just, she would be in the master bedroom watching like pretty much the same things. Like she would watch what she wanted to watch, and she would be on the phone talking to relatives, talking to her girlfriends, things like that. So there was like I think I probably like now thinking in pragmatic sort of like adult circumstances, it was probably very needed for mom to just have just a little breathing space to herself as well. So but yeah, so I mean, like I said, it was a few years that were really special, but yeah, that's the brief history of Boys Night In. And I've been ending these videos with a question. And I really do appreciate when people get involved and they, you know, they add their responses like that, because it's nice we can all just have like a nice conversation. So this is my question for you all. You know, what is your favorite movie watching snack? Because like I said, like during Boys Night, like we would always have the popcorn and pickles, you know? And like, of course, like popcorn is a standby, but like, you know, it could like, you know, what is your favorite movie watching snack? Is it, you know, is it chocolate? Is it ice cream? This week I actually tried mochi in 2 different flavors, in mango and strawberry. It's actually pretty good. Interesting texture. It's kind of like a gum, like a gummy pocket of ice cream. It's pretty interesting. I like it because it's also kind of like a portion control thing too. But it could be like, you know, popcorn, chocolate, ice cream, pizza, cereal. I mean, I'm like, you know, I've watched movies just having like just a bowl of cereal. What's your favorite movie watching snack? Let me know in the comments below. Thank y'all very much for joining me for another episode of Movie Ninja. This has been episode 3, Boys Night In, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.